Hello everyone, it is me again for the third time today, Kieran from Speaking Spurs. You must be absolutely sick of the sight of me now. Video number one, which came earlier in the afternoon, was the announcement of Mickey van der Ven as a Tottenham Hotspur player, centre-back through the door. Video number two was technically a YouTube short. I did that one, which was the announcement of our second signing of the day, the under-20 international Argentinian striker, Valise. And here we are for video number three, because we have played our last pre-season game of pre-season against Barcelona, which we did lose. However, many positives. Don't read too much into the loss. I was lucky enough to be able to watch the game, so we're going to talk a little bit about that, the team that played, players that were left behind and the reasons why, and the surprising player amongst everything that was pretty much the player or second best player on the pitch. And many of you will be shocked, as he's somebody we very much expected to go out of the door. So let's talk through the lineup. So Postecoglou, he named an alternate lineup with 10 changes to the outfield players for the final friendly of the pre-season. So we took on Xavi's side in the Joan Gamper Trophy match at the Estadi Olympic Luis Company. Now, some of you may recognise the name of that stadium, and that's because in 2016, Mauricio Pochettino's squad actually went there for pre-season training. So a few of them will have been familiar with it. It's an absolutely gorgeous stadium. One bit at the back has got this lovely clock with a beautiful archway coming through, lovely open top stadium. So it's the first football match to be played at the stadium in 14 years. So we actually used it for training pre-season, not playing matches. So obviously we only played Shakhtar Donetsk on Sunday afternoon, beating the Ukrainian side 5-1 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in front of loads of fans, 56,000 and something great. Most of the players that day actually got 90 minutes of action, and then Postecoglou admitted after the game that he'd have to change things around for the Barcelona match because of our disrupted pre-season, with obviously a cancellation, and then Roma obviously didn't end up playing us and we had to step in. It's been a really disrupted pre-season, and actually none of it is our fault whatsoever, really out of our hands, and it's a shame because we'd be a little bit further ahead had things gone to plan. So plenty of players were left at home following their massive efforts in the match at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So the likes of Harry Kane, James Maddison, Christian Romero, Kulusevski, Udogi and Højbjerg. Richarlison had a knock for the Shakhtar game, so he missed that match, but he was back to start against Barcelona. Postecoglou did decide to keep Vicario in goal to give him further experience of playing with the Tottenham defenders in front of him, which I think was a sensible decision. He took a bit of a battering towards the end of the game. But the four at the back this time was Porro, Davinson Sanchez, Eric Dyer and Sergio Reguilon. Yves Bissouma, we know, is expected to be a massive part of Postecoglou's season. His absence against Shakhtar obviously gave him the leading role in the middle of the park against Barcelona. Van der Ven and Alejo Valise signed too late, and they're still awaiting their work permits, so they were unable to take part in the trip. However, 18-year-old defender Ashley Phillips, he was on the bench after his £2 million move from Blackburn last week. So the 11 players that were selected to start was Vicario in goal, Porro, Dyer, Sanchez, Reguilon in defence, Skipp and Bissouma, and Lo Celso in midfield, with Solomon, Richarlison and Perisic further up. Substitutes bench, Austin as the backup goalkeeper, Gunter, Emerson, Spence, Phillips, Davies, Sarr, Devine, Son and Scarlett. So yeah, a bit of a mixed bag on the bench. Some youngsters coming in, but some of the guys that did actually play in the game against Shakhtar. So yeah, how do I think the game went? I think we started pretty poorly and pretty slow. We grew into the game after about 15-20 minutes. Some players took a little bit longer, but once we grew into it, the style of football really took over against a decent Barcelona side, some experienced players in there. Obviously, Lewandowski was on the pitch and scored the first goal after not very long at all. A bit more dodginess from Pedro Porro. So I do think Emerson Royal at the moment is very much the main man on the right-hand side to start with until Porro can sort his defensive capabilities out. But I do think he improved as the game wore on. But yeah, in terms of the way we used the ball, it was good. We were taking risks again. Obviously, it's a completely different 11 to we saw the other night. So what you've got to remember is the players are so far behind in their preparations. You're going to see moments where things don't quite click. And that's why I didn't want to read too much into this game. Barcelona were making changes throughout the game. We once again let a lot of players have 90 minutes, and that obviously affected us as the game wore on. So let's talk a little bit about the first half for the players. So Skippy scored twice, and Perisic and Bazuma really shone in that first half. So let's talk about Vicario. He was beaten by a clinical Lewandowski volley within 2 minutes, then pushed away a shot from the same player from the edge of the box. That was 18 minutes in. He then punched out a ball that he then had to save after it was sent back almost over him. So, bit of a hit and miss first half. Pedro Porro, a quiet first half. He was nowhere near when Lewandowski scored early on. Really poor defending, having been drawn across. Another goal conceded in pre-season that's come from his side of the box, and it just seems to be a continuous thing with him. He's not contributing as much early on in games as we want going forward, but he is making these defensive errors, which is why very much Emerson, I feel, has to be the main man on that side in that position. But Porro was brought in to be a wing back, and we're not playing that system at the moment, so we're actually playing inverted fullbacks. On the other side, Sergio Reguilon, he lost Rafinha behind him for the early Barcelona goal, but did play a big part in Skipp's equaliser with his run and back pass to Perisic. He had a pretty energetic first half, and in terms of attacking, I actually feel like Reguilon's improving. Defensively, he's still a bit hit and miss like he always has been, but we're seeing a bit more of what we used to see from him. Eric Dyer, he looks shaky at times along Sanchez, and the high line is definitely not for him. He's much better in a back three. He did get a grip on the back line as the half wore on, though. Davinson Sanchez, all over the place in trying to chase Rafinha for the opening goal within 2 minutes. He sent a header at the goalkeeper from a corner at the other end. He did defend better as the half wore on with a few good tackles, and he passed pretty well under pressure on the whole. In that first half, and we know that Sanchez is somebody that's been notorious for really poor passing when under pressure, which always baffled me considering he came through the academy at Ajax. It never really got to grips with that. Moving into the midfield for the first half, Oliver Skipp, a goal against Barcelona is definitely one for the CV, but two is even better. The young midfielder was facing a tough time in the midfield with the host's movement early, but he bounced back. He got his own back with by clinically firing home a loose ball from the for the equaliser. He then really well entered the box for a Perisic cross after, it was a great run, and then headed that home to make his double. So he was definitely the man of the match in the first half. Yves Bissouma got better and better as the half wore on with some confident dribbles and turns. One great track back to slide in and stop a Barca attack. Lots of confidence on the ball. He's going to be a massive, massive player this season. And then Giovanni Lo Celso. Got onto Reguilon's pass and hit the post. That was what led to Skipp's buried loose ball. He tried to link the midfield and attack with quick passes out wide. The thing I like about him is he really suits this system, and it is almost like having a new player. And I'm glad it's worked for him, because when we signed him, we thought we were getting this really great player, and there's just not been a manager that's able to have him in a system that really works. This does work for him, and whether he's a starting player or comes from the bench, I think he's going to be an important player for us this season. Manor Solomon caused Barcelona some problems down his flank. He sent a shot wide after the hour mark and ran through late in the half, but hit a weak shot. Even Perisic on the other wing played a lovely reverse ball to Reguilon in the build-up to Skipp's goal. He then supplied the perfect cross for his second. I mean, as a winger, he could be a massive player for Postecoglou. His ability to put the ball into the box is great. He's got his little step-overs. He creates a very good yard of space, but without having to track back and do all that defending, works really well. His deliveries have so much quality. And then Richarlison, didn't really do much in the first half. He had a shot deflected wide 15 minutes in. Didn't really see much of the ball. And you tend to see this a little bit in a Postecoglou system. Harry Kane's obviously a different gravy of player, and people will pick him out more because he's a main man and he'll drop deep at times. But normally the guy through the middle is very much a workhorse that runs around, presses from the front, causes problems, drags defenders about, whilst everybody else does the quality work. So I'm not too worried about a performance like that in the first half. So moving on to the second half, Vicario was, I say the second half overall. So we spoke about the first half, but couldn't really do much about Ferran Torres' finish from 2 yards. He did save from Azalzuli soon after, made a wonderful flying save from a free kick late in the game, but was beaten by 2 late finishes. So it's a bit of a mixed bag from him. I'd say one of them he could have done better. He basically left an open net. He was scrambling about, but it's one of them where the defence was so tired they did him no favours in this game. So still, it's very, very difficult to judge how his pre-season's been. Pedro Porro, he did have a low shot, saved in the second half, but was again caught on his heels for both of the late goals. So, all in all, 3 goals in this game where he didn't really pull his weight. Reguilon on the other side, he was beaten too easily down his flank for Barcelona's third, and then he looked injured and didn't move to stop the move for their fourth. So yeah, I feel like the 90 minutes was probably a bit too much for him. Then Eric Dyer. The ball to Fati was played between him and Porro. It just wasn't a great night for him overall. Second half, he didn't really get much better. It's been a typical Eric Dyer display. But he's not really played much of pre-season anyway, so at the moment it's very hard to judge. I feel like he's trying to get back to fitness. He's just not quite there yet. So 90 minutes again, another player is probably a stretch too far. Moving on to Davinson Sanchez for the second half. He dealt well with a ball that came over Porro early in the second half, with a last-ditch tackle to cover the Spaniard. Before the hour mark, he made a great sliding block to divert a shot over the crossbar, and then another moments later on the run. He was definitely our best defender on the night by a country mile, massively. I mean, if I was to give him a player rating for the whole game, I'd give him a 7. It would have been an 8. But harsh or not, a defence that conceded 4 goals can't really have someone with an 8 in it, but he didn't really do much wrong, and it wasn't really his fault. I actually thought, considering he's the player that's definitely meant to be going out the door of the defence, put in a very confident display. He ran, I mean, obviously in the first half he had that moment with Rafinha where he really struggled with him, but in the second half I just thought there was a couple of times where he was chasing down the wing, made real good recovery runs, and he's got a very long lunging slide tackle. And it annoys me because he's so inconsistent. I know he hasn't had enough game time, and I've been a real advocate about that in his Spurs career, that he's been in and out the side way too much. He's basically just been in there to cover injuries, and it's no fault of his own. It's just the fact that we had Alderweireld and Jan Vertonghen next to each other for so long, who were magnificent, and then Dyer obviously decided to convert back into a central defender, which then put more competition for places on him. But he has this ability in him to be a top defender. He showed that tonight. Other than, losing Rafinha in the build-up to the first goal, he made some great sliding tackles, had great energy. He was very composed on the ball. And, why wait till now when you're basically about to be sold? Crazy. Oliver Skipp. yeah, he worked hard in the second half. Came off after 70 minutes before the game turned to be replaced by Alfie Devine. So I think overall for him, very successful evening. He came back into the squad late, obviously after the his international duties. So for him to be playing as well as he has been, I'm really happy for him. Bazuma again just continued with the confidence on the ball. He took a whack and was replaced late on, but I felt like the only way the Barcelona players could handle him was to just keep pulling him by the shirt, pulling him by the arms, putting in dirty challenges on him. And he made some very good players tonight look pretty average. He was skipping past him. It was reminiscent at times of Musa Dembele when he just goes through, but he's just got slightly, how shall I say, Musa Dembele kind of glided through with strides, and Yves Bazuma kind of does it a little bit more on a smaller scale, but just goes past players. Yeah, the Celso continued in the second half to battle away. I think he made some good tackles high up as well, and good recovery challenges to get us back on the attack. One of the things that I liked in the second half about him, he still continued to move the ball quickly, which I know is what Ange Postecoglou wants. So, yep. In the second half, after Perisic went off, we saw Manuel Solomon switch over to the left, but he really struggled for an end product. But he's still trying to fit into this new system and with a new team. Even Perisic, before he was replaced, he came off at the 75-minute mark for Jed Spence. So Jed Spence went into the right-back role, which pushed Porro into midfield. And then, Solomon went over to the other side. But, again, a good performance for him. And obviously 90 minutes is probably too much of a stretch for him constantly. But I think if you manage his minutes well, or coming off the bench, could be a really important player. So talking about the subs, Jed Spence, came on... Oh, sorry, he came on in a right wing role, not right back role. It was just what was happening was when Porro was going forward, they were switching. He used the ball well until a late moment when he was tackled high up the pitch, and then Barcelona broke, scoring the winner. So what happened there was, I feel sorry for him, because at the same time as wanting the players to do what Ange wants them to do, which is just, shift it quickly or just go past the player and put a low cross in, he tried to square up his defender and take him on. And I get why he was trying to do it. He wants to impress. He's eager to impress. And he just got tackled and then couldn't really get his foot in to get back and win the ball back. Alfie Devine came on, worked hard in the midfield, but Barcelona grew stronger with their many changes. And then Dane Scarlett, some nice touches after coming on and linking up with Bazuma. And then Pat Matasar came on quite late for Bazuma for the final few minutes. So overall, considering this is meant to be our so-called B team, I suppose the only change you could say was Bazuma would have been in the first squad against Shakhtar had he not picked up that knock, and maybe he would have replaced Højbjerg, or maybe Pat Matasar wouldn't have played the Shakhtar game. But the majority of them were what we would call our second string players, and barring the late capitulation, they held their own. And in fact, for large periods of the game, we were the better team. And I was really impressed. Obviously, the defensive frailties are still there, but we know Van der Ven has been brought in to help cover with that. So all in all, I'm really happy with that. And part of the capitulation was, yes, the defence is not where it should be yet. Porro's definitely not up to standards. Reguilon was clearly nursing a bit of an injury as the game wore on. And then you've just got the fact that a lot of players aren't used to the 90 minutes. So it was the first time this set of players were getting their 90 minutes. So they were tired towards the end of the game. I got no complaints. So let's talk now about what Ange Postecoglou had to say. So what were your thoughts on the game? He said it was good. First half was excellent. They got the goal, the early goal, but our response to that was excellent. The whole first half, we played some really good football, pressed them, and you could see they were uncomfortable. I thought the lads were outstanding. We just ran out of legs in the second half. We had a lot of guys out there who it was their first 90 minutes at this intensity. And that's the key thing to remember. The intensity. Ange's football is relentless, okay? So you've got to be really fit to play it, a bit like we were under Pochettino all those years ago. He said, it was my decision not to make too many substitutions today and leave the guys at home, because I feel with pre-season the way it was, we're a couple of games short. It cost us in the end, but in terms of the effort the players gave, maximum, and that's all you can ask for. What did you make of Oliver Skipp? He said he has been outstanding. Obviously, he didn't have much of a break, but since he's been in, he's got bags of energy and he uses that really well. He maintains an intensity with and without the ball, and that makes him hard to contend with. He was outstanding tonight. He got a significant knock early, but battled through it, and it shows the character of him. And this is one thing that I like about Skippy. I feel like he's learning quite a bit from Højbjerg, and Højbjerg we know is pretty much indestructible. You will, whether he has gashes on him or anything like that, he just carries on battling through, and I feel like that has helped made Skippy a tougher player, but he's somebody that always gives his all. They then said, you made changes tonight with a second choice starting 11. Richarlison came in and missed some chances. Any concerns there? He said, there is no first choice or second choice. We needed to get minutes into everyone. Richie has had a bit of a knock and missed a few days training. You could see he needed the run. He worked so hard for the team. He was unlucky with his chances, but it's really important for us to get 70, 75 minutes out of him today. And he works so hard. And it's somebody you can clearly see that he likes. He loves Richarlison's work rate. So he was then asked, how does just Richarlison playing change the team? He said it doesn't really, not in terms of the way we set up. Every player brings their own characteristics to it, and that is what we want in the squad. It's not about having like for like. I've never believed that is the way to set up a squad. You want players to provide something different. The basic framework of our game doesn't change, and the central striker is still the focal point. He got into good areas, and we got the ball into him. Every game we've played, the striker has had a decent amount of chances, and that's what we need to continue to do. And look, I'm an advocate of this as well. I hate it when you have like-for-like players, because if they're like-for-like, when you're making a substitute, you're not really changing anything in the game other than a fresher set of legs. You're not giving a different outlet, the opposition something different to worry about. So I completely agree with this. No Tanguy and Ndombele or Joe Rodon tonight. Can we read into that they're not in your plans? He replied with, no, it's just the decisions I've got to make. They're a little bit physically behind the rest, as well as you well know. The way we play, there's a bit that I need to be strong on, and that is that you've got to be at a certain physical level to play this kind of football. If you're not, it does no justice to the player themselves, but there's no doubt that we've got a big squad at the moment, and there will be outgoing and those decisions are going to be made by the club and the players themselves. Tonight was about getting minutes into the lads that I felt we needed to be ready come Sunday. And look, that's a fair point. Joe Rodon did have a knock towards the back end of the season. Tanguy and Ndombele obviously was very unlucky to get the knock when he did during pre-season, which has given Giovanni Lo Celso the chance to push on. And yeah, Tanguy's been a player that's always never been the fittest in the squad anyway. So for this kind of intensity, I suppose Ange has given him the best chance to build himself back up and see what he can do. But I have a feeling he'll be one going out the door. And Joe Rodon, we haven't seen at all, not even for a couple of minutes. So they said, you've got Van de Ven and Valise in today. What are they going to bring to your squad? He said, we're really pleased to get them into the squad. Mickey Van de Ven, we've been onto for a while. Just great profile for a centre-back, particular for the way we want to play. Physically, he's quite commanding. He's got a real presence about him. He's a left-sided centre-back, which helps in the structure of the team. Really ambitious young man. He's only had a year in the Bundesliga. He was at Volendam before that. It's not like he was at a big club before that. He's making strides, and hopefully this jump is another one which we see him really develop. For us, he's not just one for this year, but for the long term, that we felt can become a really important player for our team and will be a really excellent defender for us. With young Valise, he's one we identified, and he's got a lot of talent for a youngster. He's got a great profile. He's a big guy, and he's very mobile, and he works hard. He's already made an impact in the Argentine First Division, and again, good to have him in. Now, the thing I think that's important about this one is, obviously, we've now started using a lot of data to help pick the players, and I feel like that happened with Van de Ven himself as well because of his pace, and I feel like data there has helped see where he's going to develop into what areas. But with Valise, I feel like this is one where we probably decided not to miss out on the chance because he's on the rise, and the other player we'd looked at previously to come from Argentina was Julian Alvarez, who we know then ended up going to Man City, and every time he's come on he's looked very good, and maybe there's that bit of let's get the next guy. Let's not wait around, not let a club like a Man City, Manchester United, Chelsea go grab that player. Don't leave ourselves behind. So I feel like they've taken the plunge on this one, and hopefully it turns out to be a good signing. They then asked, you said last week you want one or two centre-backs in, so still another one to come in that position? He replied with, yeah, potentially. Again, we've got to make sure that we keep the squad manageable and see what happens with outgoings. But yeah, potential is there to bring in one more. That's interesting. That probably does tell me Joe Rodon is going out the door. Tanganga will probably go out the door. I don't know whether it'll be permanent or not. There are rumours that Inter Milan are taking a look at him. And you're finding this with Italian clubs. They're quite liking taking English defenders on at the moment. You know, you've seen with Tomori at AC. So would you like outgoings to be known by the start of the season? He said, no idea. Look, with the window closing at the end of the month, there's still time for these things to happen. From my perspective, I'm not too focused on that. That's for the club and the players involved. I give my advice and opinion on it, but they're going to be the ones that are driving it. And then you said about players like... you said about leaving players like Harry Kane behind. Was that just because he needed a rest with Sunday in mind and there's nothing else to read into it? No, but I'm sure you will, he said. It was about giving the guys a rest. It was that I wasn't going to give them game time, so there's no point in them travelling here. They'll train tomorrow and they'll train hard tomorrow. It was just that I wanted to use these 2 games. Our pre-season wasn't ideal. We had one game cancelled, another game where we're supposed to play Roma. So we feel we're a game or 2 short, and we've been using these 2 games to get as many minutes into the guys as possible. And the guys that stayed at home will work hard tomorrow, and we've got minutes in the guys here today. And then, how do you feel for Sunday, and how happy do you feel about where you are in your progress? He said, it's irrelevant. We've got to be ready. It's not going to wait for us. Come Sunday, we need to be ready, and we will be. So I think that's a pretty good press conference from him. He's a very honest guy. Doesn't really avoid things whatsoever. He tackles questions head on. He gives very good answers. Nothing seems pre-calculated or anything. He just reacts in the moment, reacts very well. He's very down to earth in his answers. So I feel like from an interview perspective, the journalists probably enjoy talking to him because they actually get an answer out of him. There's no games. There's no hiding from anything. It's not like he's had words put into his mouth ready to take out there. He's a pretty honest person. So if someone hasn't gone well, he'll talk about it. He's not going to take any BS from anyone either. So yeah, I mean, all in all, I think tonight was a very good run out for a lot of those players. I mean, there's been some players that have really impressed in pre-season, some that haven't taken their chances whatsoever and have struggled. I will do a video talking about, pre-season as a whole, and unfortunately, it was disrupted because of the game being cancelled and playing a different team instead of Roma. But look, we got a good view of some of the players, and we got to look at some exciting football, which I think is really good to go into the season with. Look, we know even if we don't finish in the top 4, I think the difference is this season that we've got a brand of football that we can be proud of, and we know that in each game we're going to be trying. So the only thing that's going to let us down is the possibility of teams counter-attacking us. So basically what we were doing to teams last season, we weren't really playing with the ball. We were allowing teams to come onto us, to have all the possession, and then we would counter. So we're going to see, and we've seen it in pre-season already. There's been teams that have just had the ball on the counter, or we've been up the pitch and given away a stupid free kick, which we actually did tonight. Was it Dane Scarlett? Or it might have been Jed Spence. I mean, one of them two gave away a silly free kick up the pitch, and then they took the free kick, went down the other end and scored. That's the sort of thing that's going to happen to us this season, and it will be frustrating at times. But we know the reason why. Hopefully Mickey van der Ven is going to be the answer to that, with his pace, and he's going to get us out of lots of trouble. A bit like Davinson Sanchez before we got to the last 10 minutes of the game. He got us out of trouble a few times. So, yeah, I mean, all in all, great. I will talk about a pre-season in another video, talk about the players that came out well, the players that didn't, who I think should be and probably will be sold or loaned out over the coming weeks. So, thanks for sticking around for that. About half hour there worth of video. So yeah, I've been Kieran from Speaking Spurs. I hope you enjoyed that one. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, support the video with a like, and leave your comments. And as always, guys, come on you Spurs.